Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Ray here with Moss Pawn and Gun, and today we're going to have another firearms fact video for you. And we were thinking of different firearms fact ideas, and we decided that what if we kind of curb the debate of what is 30 caliber? I mean, that's a question that gets posed all the time. People wonder, like, what is 30 caliber? What's considered 30 caliber?
It does.
In terms of ammo.
And the thing is that it covers a vast area of ammunition. I mean, if you look at what we've got in front of us, this is just a very small sampling of what is truly considered 30 caliber ammunition.
Yeah, when you talk about a 30 caliber, you're generally talking about something generally between a 308 to 311 diameter bore. For the purposes of this video, we will be discussing some of the stuff that's up in the 32 caliber range, which 32 caliber would be truly 30 caliber.
It truly is. One of the ones that really comes to mind at first would be the 32 ACP handgun cartridge, which is still very popular today, and it's been around since the teens. The bullet diameter has varied over the years from about 314 down to 308, and most of your 30 calibers don't go below 308. A few do, but they're not very popular. So that just gives you an idea of what kind of variances there are when it comes to 30 caliber.
I think there's a lot of confusion that comes to mind when we think about 30 caliber, because you look at old Army manuals, you know, U.S. rifle model M1, you know, 30 caliber.
Yes.
You know, M1 carbine rifle or whatever, you know, U.S. 30 caliber. You know, a military manual just says 30 caliber, but they leave it up to the soldier to be smart enough to realize, well, you know, there's a 30 caliber carbine round, there's a 30 caliber M1 30-06 round, M2 ball cartridge round. Of course, the two rounds are not interchangeable, but they are both 30 caliber. So I think that in America anyway, in the US, there tends to be a lot of confusion because a lot of old timers, or, you know, they might have had a dad or a pop or a grandpa or somebody that was in the war, okay, you know, they might have just been like, oh yeah, my old 30 caliber, and they just automatically attribute the term 30 caliber to anything with you know, a military rifle. They're all 30 caliber to them. You know?
It's very popular, and in the United States, the 30 caliber is the standard, most popular bore, with 223 probably becoming second. But the 30 caliber in Europe and just about every other country in the world, other than say Russia now, because they did adopt the 7.62 by 39, but that was during the late 40s, early 50s when they did that. Up until that point, the 30 caliber was mainly a U.S. proposition or North American proposition, with Canada being included in that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's something that the Europeans were more interested in, the 9mm, 8mm, and 7mm, and 30 caliber is kind of an in-between bore size when it comes to that.
Well, you know, in terms of 30 caliber, you know, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this video, and I think we'll start comparing some of the 30 calibers, and you'll realize that so many of them are very similar. There's a few terms that you can kind of wrap your mind around. One is case capacity. A lot of what a cartridge can do has a lot to do with case capacity, and that's the amount of powder that the case can hold, and reasonably what a hand loader could stand to put in it to gain the velocities and pressures he needs out of the cartridge. So when you talk about pressures, okay, you take a 308 Winchester, okay, or 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO, okay, 308 diameter projectile, all right. I take a 7.5 Swiss, 308 diameter projectile. It's not the same cartridge, it's the projectile that's 30 caliber, all right. I take a 7.5 Frenchie here, 308 diameter projectile, but of course a different parent case, different you know, powder charge, everything's different. I take the famous 30-06, okay? They're all 308 diameter projectiles. The projectiles are exactly the same.
They're totally interchangeable throughout most of the bullet weight range.
The projectiles,
for those calibers. Yes.
Okay, just the projectiles. I have a very hard time explaining that to people. They go, oh wait, I can shoot 308. No. Yeah, it's a completely different cartridge. So
it can be a little confusing at times, there's no doubt about it, because the nomenclature for cartridges doesn't particularly follow a set standard. Each country, each region, they all have their ideas of what nomenclature should be for a cartridge, so don't think that what the Europeans say is one thing, that it follows through to what Americans and the Soviets used. It's not the
Exactly.
same. It is not the same.
Exactly, and we'll get to that in a moment. So
Yes.
we're going to throw a wild card here, 300 Blackout,
Absolutely.
308 projectile, all right? That goes into that family of cartridges. So let's say that I'm going around and I'm shopping for different military surplus rifles of some sort. Like I want to go and I want to buy a Schmidt-Rubin, a K31 or something. A K31 is an excellent reloader's tool because I can use commonly available 308 projectiles, and the twists on the barrels will stabilize a humongous range of bullets, ranging from as light as 120s to as heavy as 220s.
Absolutely.
All right, so that gives you a lot of flexibility. So moving on to the Russian end of things, all right, that's when things start to get a little bit complicated. When you get into the European 30 calibers, the bores on those guns can range hugely, like with the Mosins.
They can, and
Yeah.
you'll find bores that range from 308 to as high as 314 on the Mosins, and that's just due to the variances in quality control, the period of time in which they were developed and manufactured. Still, it falls within what we consider a 30 caliber bore, and you just have to really, if you don't know, it's always best to slug the bore, and it's a
Yes.
simple process to do, and we'll cover that in a different video, but yes, it's easy to do.
Yeah, guys, and when you're talking about not only slugging the bore on a firearm to make sure you're using the proper diameter projectile for hand loading purposes, but also doing a chamber cast is very simple. If you're not sure of the chambering of a firearm and you need to verify it, a chamber cast is very simple to do yourself. The Safe casting alloy is not expensive to buy. There's no reason not to be able to do it yourself. So we'll move on to the Russian calibers, and this is where things might get a little bit more confusing if you're not confused already with the Americans. Now, we also didn't mention two other cartridges that use a 308 bore. You've got the popular 3040 Krag, all right? 3040 Krag was kind of our response to the 7mm. You know, we were getting our butts handed to us on San Juan Hill. You know, these guys were stripping these Mauser, these Mausers are stripper clips. They were just stripping them in there and laying waste to us. And we had single shot rifles that were just inadequate. You know what I mean? And our rate of fire with the Krag, we just couldn't keep up. So what we did was we made the 03 as kind of a retaliation. We go, well, that's a great gun. We got our butts handed to us, so we're just going to make the 03 as kind of a, as our answer to that. So you got a 3030. That's another 308 diameter bore. So not to change the subject, but moving on to Russian guns. So one of the first smokeless cartridges that was in use in, I guess, the Comblock realm was 7.62 by 54 rimmed. A lot of people don't realize this is one of the first smokeless military cartridges ever.
Absolutely.
One of the first.
This is one that the Russians copied from the 8mm French Lebel.
Yes.
It's almost an identical shape, form, and format to the Lebel. It is just a...
It's actually improved.
It is improved to some slight degree.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's very prolific. The Russians made millions and millions of these rifles, whereas the French didn't make as many of the Lebels. Although it was a great cartridge for its time, the 54R really just took off, whereas the Lebel did not. Other smaller bore diameter cartridges like the 7mm Mauser supplanted the Lebel very quickly, just due to the fact of its popularity and its ease of manufacturing and the format that they were doing it in at the time.
Well, guys, once the French developed smokeless powder, it created an entire arms race over the entire planet to achieve the high velocities and skinny bullets, good ballistic coefficients, Spitzer projectiles. They wanted that high velocity, that long range punch. They wanted the smokeless powder that wouldn't give away your position. When you fired your rifle, you didn't have a puff of black powder giving away your position. You didn't have the hard cleanup that you had to deal with black powder. They fouled less. You could shoot longer without having to clean. Smokeless powder changed the face of warfare.
Oh, absolutely.
And this round helped.
Just the trajectory improvement was 2.5 to 3 times what you could have gotten out of a comparable black powder cartridge of the day.
Absolutely.
So when you start looking at the ability to volley fire a rifle at 13, 14, 15, 1600 yards in a reasonably accurate volley fire, the small bores had it way over the big bores. Those guys could punch them out that far, but they had no accuracy whatsoever.
And a soldier could carry more ammunition.
Oh, yes.
So that was another good thing about them switching to smokeless and going with a 30 caliber bore versus a 45 or larger. okay, you know, around the turn of the century, in an area, I guess, that we would call the transitional period,
Yeah.
was when you had, you know, you had front stuffers that were being converted to a cartridge-contained conversion, like the Snyders, and you had Martinis that were very popular, trapdoors.
Yeah, the 50,
they were always
70 to
just trying to
45,
figure out a way
70s.
to make that thing load faster. But then they realized that going from slow and bigger to small and faster was the way to go. So you've got, in 1891, your 54R. Speaking of volley fire, the Brits developed the .303 British. Now, speaking of bullet diameters, nominally, most of your ComBlock cartridges use around a 311 to sometimes fat as 316 projectile to achieve the best accuracy.
Yes.
So the Brits were notorious for that. Some of their service ammunition, even up into the Mark IV and even the Mark V, later ammunition, could even have bullet diameters that varied as much as you know 2 or 3 thou on either side.
Sure, and they still today, the British cartridge is considered a 311 diameter bullet. It's not a true 308.
No.
You know, oftentimes you can shoot a 308 in a 300, you know, a 30 caliber barrel without a problem in the British rifles, and you know, it's an interesting transition that they made.
If you get a number 1 Mark III or number 4 Mark I or Mark II, any British service rifle chambered in 303 that's not shot out and is in decent condition, you might be able to get a 308 diameter projectile to shoot decent, but the best accuracy is generally going to be achieved with casting and sizing those bullets over bore diameter so you get a good bore ride, which we've done in the past with one of his number 1 Mark IIIs. I mean, we were cutting 1.5-inch groups with irons at 100 yards with good cast bullet loads that were properly, you know, sized. That's kind of getting off on a different subject because we're just mainly focusing on cartridges. But the 303 and the 7.62 by 54 rimmed, same bullet diameter in general. Then you've got your little 7.62 by 39. All right, that's a whole other thing you could talk about is the 7.62 by. All right, in the European realm, it's the millimeter of the diameter of the cartridge. So you got 7.62 millimeters by 39 millimeters means that this case is 39 millimeters tall. So if I take a 7.62 by 54 rimmed, that tells me we've got a 7.62 projectile on a 54 millimeter long case that is rimmed. That's generally how the Europeans do it.
And they do it that way. It's fairly common for them to do that, but it still doesn't tell you about the case capacity. You could have a cartridge that's 54 millimeters with the head diameter that's, you know, 3/4 of an inch, or one that's only 1/2 inch, and you're going to have, you know, nearly half the volume. So that doesn't tell all of the story, but it gives you a reasonable understanding of what size the cartridge is going to look like.
And there's some loops that we're going to throw you on there. Okay, so hang on here. All right, then you've got 7.62 by 25 Tokarev and 30 Mauser. If you look at those cartridges, feel them in the dark, put them in your gun, they look and function almost the same, but they are two entirely different pressures.
Absolutely.
So, you know, the pressures, you know, if you shoot 7.62 by 25 in a, you know, 1800s vintage Mauser broom handle, you're going to probably eventually blow the gun up.
You're going to destroy that gun in very short order.
Yeah, especially if it's some of the Yugo or Polish machine gun ammo, really hot stuff.
Yeah, it's bad juju. You certainly don't want to mix up the wrong ammunition in a gun of that nature, because today a good quality broom handle is well worth over $1,000, and you put a $20 box of ammo through the gun that's the wrong ammo, and you just ruined the whole thing.
30 Mauser was one of the first semi-automatic cartridges ever. You know, the Mauser pistol was just one of those amazing things. It was one of the first mass-produced semi-automatic pistols ever developed. Insanely popular, sold to multiple armies around the world, and up until really even into World War II, they were still in use to some degree in rear echelon troops and even some frontline use.
They were considered a very nice weapon. It was kind of a status symbol for some of the officers to actually carry the broom handles during World War II. So it was a weapon that was widely distributed, not as heavily manufactured as you might believe. Only a few 100,000 actual Mauser guns were made. The Spanish made more of them than the Germans did. Astra and Star made many more broom handle copies than the Germans did.
Yeah, at one point they were very
they
popular.
were very popular during the 30s and 40s.
So those are both examples of 30 caliber rounds, with the Mauser round being more of a 32 and the 7.62 by 25 being more of a true 311. You know, you got to use a smaller projectile, but European projectiles and military surplus guns, or you know, anything that's 30 bore, you're generally going to fall into the 311s to 314s, and then the 308 diameters for more of your American stuff or your Swiss or French stuff.
Yes.
And then we're going to throw one more Wildcat, because you know we have to do that.
Yep.
This is 7.62 by 45.
Czech.
This is for the CZ52 rifle. When the Czechs developed the CZ52, and really when the Czechs developed all of their service rifles from that point on,
Yes.
they really wanted to have just kind of an independence from the true com block. They wanted to be unique. They wanted to have their own ammo, their own guns. That's why you see the CZ52 pistol as being truly unique design.
It's truly unique, yes. And the Czechs at the time had nothing more on their mind than not to be Russian. And they developed things just to develop them so they would not be Russian. The 52 rifle is one of those. They basically took the dimensions of the 7.62 by 39, stretched it 10 millimeters in the midsection. So the cool thing about it is if you've got one of these rifles, you can get a chamber insert and you can run 7.62 by 39. So the problem with the 7.62 by 45 is they only manufactured it for 2 or 3 years, and it is impossibly hard to find cartridge. When you do find it, it's only manufactured 2 or 3 years. Surplus ammunition is very corrosive, and the fact is it's expensive.
Yep, it's expensive to shoot.
It is.
The guns are collectible, the ammunition is
They are.
collectible, but again, to drive the point home, a 7.62 projectile by a 45 millimeter long case.
Yes.
Not compatible with 7.62 by 39. No. So that, if I could show, you know, really only one minor issue there, is that I think that the naming of cartridges in the European realm can be a little confusing to American shooters, especially if you're not in the military surplus. We get so many people come through the shop and say, yeah, I need a box of 7.62. Well, a box of 7.62 what?
Which one, yes.
Which one? There's so many different ones. So
There is.
Then you've got, Ray will cover some of the Wildcats and some of the crazy things.
There's a lot of interesting stuff. If you look at history and check out some of the cartridges that were developed even around the turn of the century when smokeless powder became pretty much in vogue. Everybody was able to get it. They could develop cartridges around it. A guy named Charles Newton actually went so far as to develop a bunch of cartridges, had a guy named Adolf make a bunch of nice rifles, very high quality stuff. But these guys were producing velocities in the 3,200 feet per second range with 150 grain projectiles in 1913. So that's almost 50 years prior to the Winchester Magnum, which everybody thought was the holy grail of 30 caliber cartridges. No, Charles Newton did it 50 years before that. The problem was during that time is the rifles were just extremely expensive. They were super high quality, and they were almost $1,000 in 1913. Today they're priceless, damn near it, but just the fact is they were able to produce that kind of velocity and the quality of rifles to produce that, you know, cartridge and accuracy to bring that 30 caliber up to its potential. The interesting part about that is the guns were so overpriced for the time that he really didn't make any money at it and ended up failing in business. But just to show that the concept worked, he was able to do that.
But it makes for a good story.
It does. It does. It's an interesting part of firearms history. There's a lot of it out there. There's so many cartridges that came up and down over the years that all had a 30 caliber name to them. We could probably delve into that for an hour on this video, but we're not. If you're truly interested in it, grab a volume of Cartridges of the World. It's all there. And it's a very interesting read if you like that kind of thing, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking through Cartridges of the World, a lot of times, you know, it'll have a section just like 30 cal, bam. You go flipping through and it's all kinds of random 30 cal stuff if you want to learn about it. This is just scratching the surface, and I can't believe we forgot 300 Win Mag in our lineup.
Well, 300 Win Mag is kind of a ubiquitous cartridge. It's one of those that has been around for a long time. People overlook it, but it's a great cartridge. It has a lot of assets to it. It doesn't require huge action. It does give you excellent ballistics. With today's modern powders, you can truly get on up there in the velocity levels, and with today's projectile designs like the ones from Lehigh and a few other manufacturers, you can truly do a lot with that caliber that just 20 to 30 years ago was unheard of to try to do.
Well, not to mention that, and then you also get, and this is kind of, diving into probably a little more than we want to cover in this video, but then you start getting onto like improved neck angles and like doing like your super short magnums, keeping the 300 Win Mag power, but increasing like shoulder angle and keeping it in a shorter package, using faster burning powders, and putting some really throat burning cartridges together that fit in a short, action, but you still get that punch,
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of super short magnums because the powder's needed to really get those things cooking. You'll shoot barrels out pretty quick on them.
You will, and I consider them kind of boutique cartridges, but everybody likes what they like, and if you didn't try to make it, then you'd never know.
That's right, and that the variety is the spice of life. And a lot of folks ask me, hey, well, why own all these different guns, Eric, that are in all these different calibers? To me, that's kind of the challenge of it. I go to a gun show and I find an old antique rifle or something, and the first thing I can think is the weirder it is, the more obscure it is, the more I want it, because I want to find a way to make it work and get it shooting again. And oftentimes, that tends to be my driving goal. Other people, they might want to close in their firearms collection into something that's a little bit easier to manage. So they might buy several rifles in .308 or several guns in .30-06 so that they can only have to have one type of 30 caliber ammo to stock.
That's the nice thing about here in the United States. 30 caliber is the standard bore diameter that most people tend to lean towards for general purpose use. It can kill just about anything that walks, crawls, or flies with the right cartridge. It can be very pleasant to shoot if you load it down. And there's so many calibers that are out there that just cover the gamut of anything you'd ever want to do in 30, that it is the popular caliber for the United States, for North America. So, if you're looking to purchase a new rifle, definitely look at something in 30 caliber, .308, .30-06, .30-30, maybe 7.62 by 39.
Yep.
There's so many components and available options out there for you. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, guys, can't go wrong. In terms of projectiles, if you're a hand loader, there are more 30 caliber projectiles laying around than just about anything else. So if you want to get a cartridge that's got some good shelf life to it, that you're always going to be able to find reloading components for, you can't go wrong with a good old 308, 7.5 Swiss. It really comes down to preference. I tend myself to be a little bit more of a 30 cal guy. I like my Scar Heavies. I like my 7.5 Swiss as a cartridge. I like .30-06. Love 308. So I tend to lean towards that. I like the accuracy. I like the case capacity. I like the ease of hand loading. I find that sometimes handling small, tedious reloading components like loading 223, 5.56 can be a little hard to small. 308's great if you've got limited hand dexterity and you have a hard time holding something small. If you have limited manual dexterity, 308 is a very easy cartridge to load. The components are rather large, easy to get a hold of, so that might be a consideration as well.
And from a logistical standpoint, the caliber itself is the most popular caliber here in the United States. So if you buy a 308 rifle, you can go anywhere in the United States and you can buy ammunition, you can buy components, you can feed the weapon. And from a survival standpoint, if you just, hey, I want a gun that's going to work and I'm going to be able to get ammunition for it, no matter what the situation might be, a 308's an awesome caliber to choose.
Yep.
5.56 as well, but we're talking about 308s tonight, so definitely look at the 308 if you have that type of scenario on your mind.
Well, guys, we're going to be doing another video like this, and we're going to cover 22 caliber. Okay,
Yes.
So everybody thinks 22 and their mind goes nuts. They just can't wrap their minds around it, but there's a lot of random cartridges that are centered around a pill roughly in 22 diameter. So we'll cover that. There are some things, some good information that can be put out about that. We hope you enjoyed this video. We hope you learned something. Consider subscribing, comment. Is there a favorite cartridge that you just love that we left out? Is there something that you have, some knowledge that we didn't share that you think would be good to add? Leave it in the comment section below. We appreciate the support. I always like it to have a chance to get Ray on the channel. Everyone loves Ray, so.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see.
All right, well, guys, we appreciate the support, and much more on the way. More gripes, more facts, 5 guns, more meltdowns, torture tests, gun reviews gunsmithing. I mean, we do it all.
A lot of cool stuff on the way, definitely. So
Yep.
stay tuned, subscribe. Have a good evening.
See y'all later.